Hey, what's going on, guys? Kalamazi here, and this Wednesday's Shadowlands beta build brought with it even more Warlock tuning. We actually had a handful of changes to conduits, a little bit of Soulbind tuning today, which we'll talk about, at least looking at mainly the Kyrian Pelagos Soulbind. There probably was some more, but for the most part, Pelagos is what I want to talk about briefly. And then looking at a couple legendary changes, which might sound a bit familiar to you guys. So, any WeakORS profiles or add-ons you see here are indeed available to you for free on my Twitch. If you want to swing by, hang out, grab them, ask any questions anytime, feel free to do so. So, oh, by the way, axe toss. Let's start off with the axe toss changes, and then into conduits and the legendaries and soulbinds. Boys, we did it. Where are we, boys? Take a wild guess where we are. This is where I have made my home for most of the BFA. We are in front of a Talazar with my good friend Era Shock. We're going to look at the changes to axe toss today. In case you guys missed it, we won, finally. My multi-year struggle, my prayers have been answered. Axe toss apparently now interrupts mobs. Okay, so essentially the change to axe toss today is that it, for the most part, checks. I don't have a pet out, do I? There we go. It checks if the mob is casting an ability that can interrupt, and if it is, it interrupts the ability. And then if the mob is stunnable, it also stuns. It's really solid. But just to show you guys, I want to truly show you just what it does. And I want to show you on a Feasting Sky Screamer. This is the mob that I have mentioned for so long as an example for why Demonology needs an actual interrupt. Now, these Sky Screamers are tall as are. When they cast their Terrifying Screech, if you interrupt them, they will stop the cast. If you stun them in the middle of their Terrifying Screech cast, they will recast again once the stun, stops. It's sort of why you see groups in Mythic Plus at times getting feared after what you think is an interrupt. It doesn't happen. It's a stun. Somebody stunned it and probably overlapped somebody's interrupt, or they interrupted after the stun, and you guys get feared or whatever, and it all goes downhill. What we're going to do here, I'm going to run in. We're not going to do anything. I'm just going to pull this. Axe toss is here. Let's pull it over here. Wait for the Screech. Wait for it. Any day now. Screech. Axe toss. Is it going to recast here? Nope. No recast, boys. No recast on the Sky Screamer. But you might say, maybe they just fixed the Sky Screamer. Let's Shadow Fury the Sky Screamer when it casts again. Shadow Fury? Is it going to recast? There's the recast. Axe toss is fixed. So essentially this version of axe toss, thank God, hallelujah, this version checks if what it seems to be. It checks if there's an ability that's being cast that you can interrupt. If it is, it interrupts the ability, and then it checks if you can stun the mob. If it's stunnable, it stuns. It doesn't have an actual spell lockout. Once again, axe toss, there you go. It doesn't have an actual spell lockout like Spell Lock does for your Fell Hunter or whatever, but it's still an interrupt. This is what we needed. This will make it so that, because there are mobs like these in Shadowlands that will recast abilities if you stun them. This is what we needed. This is what Demonology has been lacking for a very long time. And while it might not seem like a big deal, it truly is. The fact that you don't have a reliable interrupt in Mythic Plus, you might have an amazing damage profile. But when you're in a key where you need interrupts, and even, for example, in Obelisk, like the Spider Obelisk, where you need that interrupt, your group has to have you. They have to be able to rely on you. Oh, well, if it's not stunnable, if it's stun immune, I can't interrupt it. You have to have that interrupt. Here we are. It will still indeed interrupt bosses, but if it can't stun the boss, which most of the time it can't, it won't do that. Oh, so your other concern might be, yeah, well, the travel time on axe toss is really bad. If there's a mob far away, for example, let's use Underrot. If you're fighting a worm, you pull like a Defiler over here. Yeah, well, you have to interrupt it, and it's far away, all that kind of stuff. You know what? That used to be the case. Remember how axe toss, I guess, arcs in this massive arc, and 10 minutes later it hits the target? Check this out. Hey, buddy, interrupt that. It just chucks the axe right at it. There's no arc off the screen upstairs in my apartment complex hitting the mob 10 minutes later. It just chucks the axe right at it. The travel time's been reduced. It's a straight path, straight trajectory. It's good to go. Axe toss has been fixed. I am incredibly excited, incredibly happy about it. So with that being said, there are still some other changes to Warlocks today. Let's get into those, but I'd be lying to you guys if I said it. This wasn't the most exciting change for me today. Axe Toss, not just me, but most of Demo Lock's multi-year battle getting Axe Toss fixed. It's fixed. Axe Toss is fixed. Okay, getting past the amazing changes to Axe Toss, there was a bit of tuning done to Warlock today. Now, I use the word tuning. Technically, you could use the word nerfs, but I use the word tuning because, being real, there's been nerfs or this similar tuning across a lot of classes for the past couple weeks. Now, I feel that it's probably Blizzard trying to either bring Soulbinds and Conduits and things in line numerically DPS-wise for what they have in mind Mythic tuning when it comes to Mythic tuning for Nilotha and just Mythic Plus in the first patch. This also could be interpreted as a way of maybe nerfing certain interactions and then a couple weeks down the line maybe buffing the actual damage of certain abilities like, well, we'll get to that. So, the first thing here, 2 changes for Affliction Soulbind Conduits. Focus Malignancy. Malefic Rapture deals 25, now 15% increased damage to targets suffering from unstable affliction. So you can see here, they hit the ceiling on it. It's pretty much, for the most part, well, you know, universal-ish across the board. You actually lose a little more the higher it goes here. This trait was really good when it came to affliction. You pretty much played this in Mythic Plus, and you played this in single target too. I guess Mythic Plus depending on what build you're playing, but the thing is, you're still going to play this in single target with the Shadow's Embrace corrupting, I believe it's corrupting Leer Conduit, I believe so. Where's it called here? I believe it's corrupting Leer. It's somewhere. It's actually Cold Embrace, I'm sorry. So, single target-wise, you're still looking at playing Focus Malignancy and Cold Embrace. We're playing these 2 in Mythic Plus and trying out like a Minute Dark Lair build, but like, these are still going to be your 2 go-to conduits. Like, a Malefic Rapture damage increase, it's 21 here actually, because this is a higher rank. 21 you can see, I guess, right about here. This is rank 5 or so. It's still good. Now, this is not a 10% nerf to Rapture's damage across the board. This is only a nerf to the bonus damage Rapture is dealing on your target that has Unstable Affliction on it. So, this is not as big of a nerf as it seems. It's a nerf, but honestly, when people say AF is terrible now, the sky is falling, it's not the case at all. It's more or less tuning. These things are going to happen. This is how alpha and beta always go. This is how even PTR goes. So for the most part, it's okay. It probably was warranted because it was a very strong conduit, and honestly, it still is. The second change here is to Rolling Agony. I'm going to be real. This is actually pretty exciting. So it's 4 seconds baseline. It increases a bit more per rank here. A max of 9.6 extra seconds on your Agony. And that's not factoring in Pandemic as well. You have a 22. I guess technically I already have it slotted in here, I believe, right? Let me see. I'm looking at 22 seconds right now on my Agony. Well, tack on another 5 seconds, you're looking at like 28 seconds, probably like 33-ish seconds when you Pandemic and Agony. Like, this is a really long time. Now, rank 5 is what I have now, which is the, I believe, for Rolling Agony, or for this. So I believe, like, Rolling Agony should be around 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, give or take about, like, here-ish, when it comes to acquiring it from Mythic Plus early on. I believe you can get all the way up to 6.4, maybe, depending where the rank 7 conduits drop in Shadowlands. That hasn't been confirmed yet. But regardless, like, having a 9.6 second extension when we get to this level of conduits is going to be insane. It's almost going to feel like having absolute corruption for Agony as well. You're going to have so much extra time to fill with Drain Souls or Raptures or whatever else you're doing. It might not seem like a whole lot, but there's probably going to be packs in Mythic Plus where you run in, put your Seed of Corruption up, put your Agonies up, and don't even bother refreshing, because it just is active for so much longer. I think the fact that this also affects Pandemic it hasn't really been mentioned. I think it's sort of flying under the radar. This is a really strong conduit for Mythic Plus. I certainly downplayed it a bit when it first came out. I'm really, really, really happy with it. I will say, if you saw these changes earlier, the Demonology ones, don't worry about them. It's just a typo. Baleful is still here. Baleful is still giving you 5 shards. Don't worry about it. Just a typo. We'll coming back to Legendaries in a little bit here. We'll come back to those. But, so moving on here. Demonology Conduits. Born of Blood, Hand of Gul'dan has a 16% chance to generate a charge of Demonic Core. It essentially was just increased in value. So this one was buffed for Demonology. So Warlocks did technically get buffed a bit today. This is sort of one of the generic ones. You're casting Hand of Gul'dan in single targets in AoE, in Mythic Plus. Wherever you are, you're casting Hand of Gul'dan. It's just a part of your core rotation. So it's nice to see a buff. I mean, it's an 8% buff at max rank. It's not bad. It sort of reminds me of Demonic Core, in a sense. Or Demonic Meteor. It gives you a charge of core, more shards, more Hand of Gul'dan cast, more imps. It's nice. In the end, it's RNG, but, well, most of Demonology, I feel, is RNG at this point. One of the nerf I'm most sad about today is 2 Carnivorous Stalkers. So if you guys saw the big dog demo builds with, we were playing Carnivorous Stalkers, we were playing from the shadows. I'll swap over here. We were playing from the shadows, and we were playing Dreadlash with the legendary that increased called Dreadstalker's damage, and dealing just insane AoE damage every called Dreadstalker's cast. And the Conduit gave them a chance to reapply from the shadows or I guess re-Dreadbite, which would AoE or Dreadbite and apply from the shadows again. There was a lot of synergy with that build. Unfortunately, the Conduit has been nerfed by a pretty big amount, 8% to 3% baseline. Now, looking at the max rank here, you're at 7.2, which, I'll be real with you, when we ran this in Mythic Plus, even at 8%, it reprocced a good bit, because you have 2 Dreadstalkers, and they melee, like, they attack independently of one another. So, technically, you have more than an 8% chance, or, well, now more than a 3% chance, but this is a pretty big nerf early on. It's really disappointing. When you get to max rank here, I have to, like I said, 7.2 and 8, there's not a massive difference there. It probably is going to be a thing. Probably going to be useful, like the more you go down the line here. But early on, this build has been nerfed, and it's really sad. I like this build a lot. It was a lot of fun. This is a really fun Conduit, and I think this is probably too much of a nerf. I'll be real with you, but let's be real. 15% on 2 Dreadstalkers independently having a chance to proc this was pretty OP. I wish this had started off at like 5% and scaled to like maybe like 8 or not, maybe like 9% instead. I think this is overcompensating. It's a pretty big nerf. Hopefully that's looked at in a a future build. The other nerf here to Demonology is the Fel Commando, I guess tuning to Demonology, is the Fel Commando Potency Conduit. Now, so this is a nerf. It is tuning. However, I think this is warranted. Fel Commando is an incredibly strong conduit for Demo. So it went from a baseline 10% to 7.5. You can see it's 2.5% less here and basically here too. So it's a bit of a nerf across the board. But the thing is, Fel Commando affected Soul Strike, Demonic Strength, Fellstorm, just baseline pet damage. I'm pretty sure, I'm 99% sure, it also affected Grimoire Felguard when we tested it early on. Now, that might have changed in a later build. I haven't tested it since then. But it affected basically everything that your actual Felguard did. It was really strong. And I think a portion of this nerf could very well be attributed to the new legendary that Demonology, I guess every spec, but really Demonology acquired. If you had this effect proc on your pet while playing the Fel Commando Conduit and went into like your Demonic Strength and your Fellstorm, your damage was good. Like, your pet dealt a lot of damage. And seeing as how this Conduit still stacks to essentially 20%, 18 at a higher rank, it's still good. This is still a very good Conduit in single target, AoE, pretty much everything. This, to me, sort of feels like what Focus Malignancy is for Affliction. Yeah, it got nerfed, but it's still good. It's probably warranted, is what it is, but what can you do? In the end, it's still very strong, and your Felguard is a big portion of your damage for Demonology. So it is what it is. It's okay. It's more or less tuning. I'm not really angry about this or frustrated with it. Destruction. So I will say, Ashen Remains, I don't totally get the nerf here. It sort of feels like a Roaring Blaze kind of nerf. It wasn't overperforming anywhere from where I had seen. Chaos Ball already hits like a Wet Noodle, and Incinerate probably, honestly, Incinerate with Roaring Blaze probably hits harder than Chaos Ball at this point. I don't really understand this nerf, but I guess it's there. When you get to the higher ranks, it's basically the same. It seems like they wanted to hit the early on, like lower, like the early scaling of this, which doesn't make much sense to me either, but it is what it is. Combusting Engine. I was actually planning on making a video on Combusting Engine later this week because this Conduit was very, very good. It had flown under the radar for a while. It was pretty solid. Conflict Rate increases your remaining Immolate damage by 15, now 8%, until Immolate expires or is refreshed. This also worked in a sense with Roaring Blaze. It was a very good Conduit. So, yeah, it probably needed to be nerfed. Honestly, like, it's still a pretty substantial DPS or like increase at max ranks here. Even like early on, it got essentially halved, but it's still good. I'm not really. I think it's warranted as well. Like, when these changes, I feel, aren't like, yeah, they're nerfs, but they're like warranted nerfs because they're nerfing OP things, like similar to the Hunter Legendary that was nerfed today. Or I guess gutted, completely changed. Like, they're warranted. The Hunter thing is probably a bit of a different argument, but I mean, these are warranted changes. I don't think they're like excessive. The dog one is, but that's whatever. And I guess technically, so is well, this one here. So we'll come back to this one. Infernal Brand, because I already showed it. So my thing with Infernal Brand is that when Reign of Chaos was first spoiled, it was essentially, I guess it still is essentially like VOP Major, right? You have a chance to proc Infernals and proc more Infernals and more Infernals, and the number you proc is RNG based. The thing is here, I'm pretty sure Infernal Brand started off at 10%, and they cut it in half. And now they've cut it in half, maybe even more than a half. Again, the problem with Infernal Brand, this, I could be wrong here, this sort of feels like a knee-jerk kind of reaction, like, we can't tune this with Reign of Chaos, just nerf it, make it irrelevant. Now, I don't know if it's irrelevant, but this is a really, really big nerf, man. I mean, it even scaled from 5 to 12%. It scales from 2 to 4.8. It was nerfed a lot. This is like a gutting in a sense to me. But the thing is, with Reign of Chaos, like if you went in and dropped your Infernal early on, right? I'm not playing Destroy game. If you went in and dropped your Infernal and got like a proc of another Infernal off your first like Shark or Consuming spell. Say, for example, I go in, I put my Infernal down, and my first Rain of Fire procs another one. Like that. You have so much more shard generation coming in because of multiple Infernals, like versus having to wait, let's say, I don't know, 10 seconds for your first proc. Getting a proc in your first cast just snowballs. More shards, more Infernals, faster and faster and faster. And it makes tuning a conduit like that tough. It makes it hard. They already separated the Infernal damage, so each Infernal you spawned during your Reign of Chaos with this conduit had its own corresponding debuff that it dealt damage to the target with. But it just sort of feels like one of those things, we can't tune it, just nerf it into the ground. And like, it sucks. This is a really cool conduit, but yeah, and I will say this is more so. This is a single target nerf. It's a bit of AOE, I guess, as well. But the Infernal Brand conduit, I think a common misconception is that, oh, this is a huge nerf to our AOE. I mean, it could be looked at that in a sense, but like, this is a single target conduit. The Infernals melee one target. They don't, like, their melees when they punch things, like when they actually punch the mob, it puts a buff on it. Their Immolation Aura doesn't stack the buff. Their melees do. And then Immolation Aura's damage is increased against that one target. Now, you could tab target around and have them stack the buff on different targets before, like when you capped out on it. But when they moved it to having each individual Infernal having its own corresponding debuff, it was a little bit tougher to do. It's a nerf. But I don't think it's as impactful to AoE as people are thinking it's going to be for Destro. Now, Destro was already nerfed with Lucid, with Wilfrid's and Reign of Chaos last build. And yeah, so it's unfortunate. It sucks, but I don't know. At this point, like, what can you do? This is a bit depressing to me. We did skip over Duplicitous Havoc. The funny thing is, if you play Duplicitous Havoc with the actual cloak here, a 25% increase from that, and I think it's 25 here. Where's the cloak at? Let's see. 25 and 25? Yeah, 50%. Your target takes essentially, we're wearing it now, I believe, right? Actually not. Why is this buffed? Am I crazy? Oh, I'm playing the actual conduit, aren't I? Yeah, I'm like, stealth buff. Stealth buff, we're good. Your target normally takes 60%, I guess your Havoc target normally takes 60% of your damage from your main target that Havoc is replicating onto it. Well, if you have this conduit at like max rank and the cloak, your Havoc target's actually taking more damage than your current target. It's pretty crazy. I think this is their attempt to like make this just more relevant in cleave fights, which there are a couple of this tier, probably the dog boss, but for the most part, it's there. I guess it's something, but I'll take it. The nerf to Infernal Brand, though, unfortunate. Combusting Engine, probably warranted. Fell Commando, probably warranted. This is unfortunate. I'm very sad about this. And Malignancy, probably warranted. But, like I said, all hope was not lost, boys, because There are a couple of legendary changes today too, which, like I said, they might seem a bit familiar to you guys. Let's talk about those. Okay, dudes. Now, I've been updating the Warlock feedback document over the course of all alpha into beta, and there have been a handful of abilities that, hey, we gave feedback on pets dying, having a 6-second resummon time being pretty annoying. Obviously it was, but we suggested Fel Domination coming back, maybe as being, yeah, it'd be a cool returning ability. It fits the theme of Shadowlands, returning abilities, and it would make sense. We got Fel Dom, like a patch or two later. There's been some things here and there. We talked about Axe Toss already, but man, oh man, this is actually insane. I'm going to brag a little bit here. So, let's read over the Shadowlands Warlock beta spreadsheet. I know it's a little bright, sorry. Focusing on this. First of all, well, technically this has already changed last build, which is nice. But the Balespider's Burning Core Legendary Demonology is frustrating to play with rotationally when juggling multiple demonic core stacks, which it is. I feel altering the effect to something along the lines of Malefic Wrath Legendary would make this much more appealing. Having a set duration on the damage increase that could be maintained by weaving in a Shadow Bolt every X seconds would improve consistency and ease of play. Well, in today's changes, Balespider's Burning Core. Shadow Bolt increases the damage of your next... Oh, wait, next is gone. Of your Demon Bolt by 8%, stacking 4 times. So it was nerfed from 25 per stack to 8 per stack. But the cool thing here, I can show you right now. Let me put this on. I believe it's... Where's it at here? Balespider's Burning Core. I think it was... a helm? Helm? Bracers? Bracers? Got it. So the cool thing here, just like Malefic Wrath, playing Demonology. We'll open up here. I don't have a pet out, but you know, we'll just do this. Let's just cast 4 Shadow Bolts here. This is the weak aura I have to track it. It's big. It's annoying. It's not going to be my current weak aura. We'll cast our dogs. We're going to be at 4 stacks here. Let's hard cast a Demon Bolt. Previously, when I finish his bolt, it would consume the stack. But it doesn't consume it. It stays there. It's permanent. Launch another bolt. It stays there. Let's launch 2 more. Bolt. Bolt. It's like Malefic Wrath now. It essentially gives you a 32% buff to your Demon Bolt damage whenever you end up casting Demon Bolt. And it has a 15-second duration. Like, this is so easy to maintain because you cast Shadow Bolt so often. Like, the duration on this thing is insane. Like, it's honestly essentially twice as long as Malefic Wrath. It's great. Now, there are times in your Tyrant setup and things where it becomes a little sketchy. There's a chance of it dropping. But I can tell you, we ran a few initial runs on some dummies earlier. Your Demon Bolt damage, you're playing Necrolord too, which to be fair, I mean, who knows what Covenant's going to be best. Your damage with actual Demon Bolt is pretty big. And having a flat 32% damage buff to this, I think also adds a lot of power to Power Siphon. Pun half intended. I think it really does. It's more or less going to be a sim thing, but it's really cool, man. It's almost like the change we suggested, like, was seen. Like, I say we because this has been a community thing. We've been updating the Warlock feedback document, which, by the way, I'll have a link to it in the video description if you want, as well as the changes to all these things study on Wowhead if you want. We've been updating the spreadsheet probably once a month, every few weeks, over the course of alpha to beta. I will say, this idea has been floating around for a while, just making it a passive effect and, like, reducing the damage on it. It's great. I love the change. But there's one other thing here. Let's go back to this, because there were 2 legendary changes today. The second one, the Implosive Potential legendary effect is too limiting in certain settings with less than 3 targets, which it is. It's either you have 3 targets, you implode for a lot of haste, or you have less than 3 and it's utterly a dead legendary. A way to address this issue would be for it to give a 1% haste buff. I mean, listen, 2% would be fine here too, but at the same time, like, we're trying to just address the fact that it's a dead legendary, because in, like, Cleave, it's very, very strong. To give a 1% haste increase per imp when it hits less than 3 targets, and an additional 3 to 4% haste when it hits 3+. It's been 5 haste, like, per imp baseline whenever it hits 3 or more. What was it changed to today? It was changed word for word. Word for word what we suggested. Implosion grants 1% haste for each imp imploded. When this damages at least 3 targets, instead gain 5% haste per imp. This is just insane, man. Like, we'll get 3 imps out here, and we will implode. Boom. And there you go. It's truly just insane. Now, I mean, a 3% haste increase, it's probably going to be like 6 or 9-ish, depending on setting up your hands. Like, it might not seem like a huge deal. First of all, we're at a pretty low haste percent right now in Shadowlands, but later on it might maybe need to be buffed or compensated a bit. The thing is, though, this legendary is really powerful. Like, really powerful when it comes to, you know, 3-target cleave. Having 5% haste per imp imploded is a lot. Like, just 3 imps being imploded, you get 15% haste. And normally you're imploding at least 6. If you're playing legendary, you know, and it procs you an extra hand, you're imploding 9, 12 imps. That's a lot of haste. That you're looking at anywhere from like 30 to 60, maybe 75%. And if you're imploding in an AoE setting, playing consumption, or just with your Tyrant no longer consumes imps. It just siphons some of their health. So you can get these massive implosions off. But the problem was, if I was like killing a trash pack, awesome, great, cool, and then we're running into the boss, and the tank went AFK or whatever, something stupid happened, all our imps are out and they're all expiring, we can't do anything. But now you can implode those imps for a 3, 6, 9% haste buff. It might not seem like a lot, but it's something. And this legendary's main issue was that you had no value outside of, you know, 3-target cleave. You have it now. And the fact that this change is quite literally word for word from the document, it's a bit of a humble brag, I'm gonna say it, but like, being real, this idea wasn't even just mine. This was like, I believe it was mentioned, I think Malakath mentioned it a couple months ago. It was mentioned in chat a few times, like, and I thought it was good, and we threw it into the document, and here it is. It's really crazy. Like, going over the document a few times, this was changed last build, this was changed this build, this was changed this build. There's so many things that have been changed, like just from feedback that's been given. Axe toss, right there. Like, there's so many things, but it's so cool to see this legendary change and honestly be playable in Mythic Plus. A lot more playability, because let's be real, like, one of Demo's main issues is heading from like one pack to the next, maintaining resources, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, it's a bit tough still with, you know, implosion and like heading from a pack to a boss, but having that 9% extra haste or so, it's still relevant. It's still strong. It's still good. I'm really happy with this effect change. I wouldn't mind taking 2% at the same time. I'll take it. I'm happy with it. It's good. It's a gain. It's a plus. Now, I did want to mention as well, there were a couple like generic Soulbind Conduit changes I want to talk about here. There was a tooltip change on Pillars of a Dark Portal. Nothing really changed there from as far as I've seen. The Demonic Momentum change, essentially this Conduit being a finesse one, gives you more speed coming out of your demonic circle. It's solid. Typically, you're using a circle to cheese abilities or move out of mechanics. Like, it's solid. It's nice. I'll take the speed increase. It's a buff. Diabolic Bloodstone was nerfed from 8 seconds to 6 seconds, but I'll be real with you, like, 10% leech is still incredibly strong when anybody pops a health zone. It's fine. It was probably a warranted change, in a sense. Fatal Decimation. So this is a weird one. This is a Necrolord Covenant or Conduit ability change. This is a potency one, a DPS one. Everything was removed here. Remember the Conduit when we were playing Necrolord before it was gutted a month ago? That gave you an extra chance, or a chance to not consume a stack of Decimating Bolt, and the RNG that brought the Drain Soul builds and everything? Well, that has been gutted. It's gone completely. It now says Decimating Bolt's missiles deal 50% increased damage. I didn't even know it shot missiles, but I guess the visual effect is like missiles. So there's that. This is not good anymore. So, I mean, in the end, like, being real, it's a pretty big damage increase, but I just don't see this being very good on a 45-second cooldown. It's a lot of damage, like a big damage amp. I just don't see it being very good. The final change here was to Soul Eater. This is the Conduit that affects Night Phase Soul Rot ability on your, I guess in general, but... So what they did here, they nerfed the damage early on from 30 to 25, but when you hit a certain point, it starts scaling. I think like around like what rank is this? 11? Yeah, 11. You break even, and it starts scaling a bit higher comparatively to before when you hit 12, 13, 14, and 15. It doesn't really do a whole lot, I suppose, in like single target wise. We're still playing Kyrian at this point, and I really hope they don't nerf Kyrian. I do not want to play a Night Fae, but I'll play whatever's best damage wise. So it seems like they wanted to hit the early on initial damage of this, and then later on scale it up a bit. This can all change, but I don't think it really has many changes at this point, or many implications at this point. It might make Night Fae a bit less relevant comparatively to like how close it is to Kyrian for Af and Destro and I guess Demo, depending on what you're playing. But let's be real, like at this point it's like Kyrian and then Night Fae is probably right about here, and then Necrolord and Venthyr are just downstairs. They were gutted and destroyed, and I don't think they're really even Covenants anymore. So for the most part today, happy with the changes. There were some nerfs, but I think the better way to put it is probably realistically more or less tuning. Let's talk briefly about Pelagos, the Soulbind change here. So remember this insane mastery proc that Pelagos had, but it was like renown 40 and you probably wouldn't reach it until like 9.1 or the next raid? Yeah, they swapped that. It's now the very first ability you get. Scouring Tithe increases your mastery by 233 for 10 seconds and occasionally expels sorrowful memories. Walking through sorrowful memories extends its effect by 3 seconds. Now, 233 mastery is not 1,000 like it was before, but you're still probably looking at about a 15-ish% mastery increase. I mean, depending on... It's solid. It's still good. And this being your first ability is pretty legit. They quite literally moved this and the versatility ability around. Now, if you had seen some of the actual Affliction Warlock early beta sims in my Discord, there was a build playing this ability to actually push Creeping Death a bit higher and it should have been. Well, that's been swapped around. But for the most part, honestly, I like this. Like, obviously, we know Affliction benefits from Mastery more. I mean, every spec does. Half Dash or Demo, whatever. But having it as your first ability is solid. Like, when you're looking at Kyrian for Affliction, Scouring Tithe in raiding is, more often than not, probably going to be a dot you just maintain on your target, and whenever it falls, you reapply it. Because if it doesn't kill the target, it resets the cooldown. There might be a handful of fights where you get a bit of usage out of it, like giving you shards back, but having this ability early on is really, really strong for AF with Rapture, Mastery, dot scaling. For Destruction, I mean, hey, Dasher Mastery, it is what it is. It's still a damage increase, and the fact that you can have a Scouring Tithe is also a plus for Kyrians for Destro. And let's be real, Demonology still doesn't have a Covenant, but it's solid. And Mastery, well, some Mastery is better than no Mastery, and you'll probably just keep it up at the same time. So it's cool seeing this change. I think it benefits us a decent bit. Yeah, it might push AF to being more of a contender in certain areas. I'm happy with this as a whole. Like I said today, there might have been some nerfs, I guess you could say, but I think more or less the better wording is just tuning. It wasn't just Warlocks that were nerfed today. There were a lot of classes. I mean, Frost Mage was buffed again. That's beyond me. We are at the acceptance stage of that. I just don't even talk about it anymore. But besides that, a lot of classes were nerfed or tuned today, and chances are high there's probably just some like number that Blizzard has in mind tuning wise for Nathria, for Heroic, for Mythic, whatever, and for Mythic Plus that they're trying to tune around. This also could once again mean, hey, maybe this was nerfed in a couple weeks. We'll see a different build addressing like dot damage. Like, it could open the door to one of many things. But what I'm getting at here is TLDR, I really don't think Warlock was changed or nerfed, whatever, tuned, nerfed that negatively, that poorly today. I still think we're in a pretty good spot. Thanks for watching, dudes. I hope this video gave you guys a good summary and just general understanding of really what happened today in this Shadowlands beta build for Warlocks. Like I mentioned, there were a handful of Conduit, I guess you can say nerfs, some buffs, more or less I call it tuning at this point. But there were some. The legendary changes are awesome. I'm really happy that as a community we were able to get those changed. It really just gave us a better, honestly, just, well, toolkit for Demo as a whole, legendary-wise at least. And hey, oh yeah, the axe toss changes. Can't forget those. Literally a dream coming true. Let me know what you guys think about these nerfs, changes, conduits, tuning, whatever you want to call them today. Let me know what you guys think about these changes in the comment section below. I'm really curious to get you guys' thoughts on the dog conduit nerf, the Infernal Brand conduit nerf, and I guess the Affliction one, the Focus Malignancy one, the UA Rapture one to the same extent. Although I'm not really that concerned about AF damage. I still think it's very good single target, and you know, we'll see where that goes. At the same time, I do think Demonology's toolkit right now, regardless of Axe Toss, is in a pretty good spot. Probably the most complete out of all three when it comes to single target. It really just needs that knob cranked up a bit to potentially be our best single target spec. But once again, we'll see where it goes. Any weak ORS profiles or add-ons you see here are indeed available to you guys for free on my Twitch. If you want to swing by, hang out, grab them, ask any questions anytime, feel free to do so. If you have any general questions, also feel free to leave them in the comment section below. I'll be sure to get back to you. If you guys want to see more WoW content and help support the channel, be sure to smash the subscribe button below, hit the like button while you're down there as well. Helps out a lot. Thanks again, dudes, and I'll catch you guys all again soon on stream. Peace.